Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Michael's Matters. Now, of course, I am Michael, that is if you don't know. And as the debt ceiling fight begins to heat up, and as both sides of the spectrum, that would be Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, a Republican, and President Biden, obviously a Democrat, begin to spar over raising the debt ceiling once again, it is clear that if we get to the midsummer and have not resolved these debt ceiling issues, it could cause the government to not be able to pay some or most or perhaps even all of its bills if it shuts down. And this undoubtedly has the nearly 66 million retirees and older Americans who get Social Security benefits through the Social Security program, so Social Security Retirement, Social Security Survivors, Social Security Disability, that would be SSDI, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, or VA and Railroad Retirement Benefits. It's leaving them wondering if their benefits will get affected by a potential government shutdown because of this debt ceiling fight. They also want to know, are they going to get paid? Will the payments come on time? And what could ultimately happen to Social Security benefits if the debt ceiling is not raised? So today we're going to talk about how the debt ceiling fight and how a potential government shutdown could affect Social Security benefits getting sent out to seniors, older Americans, and retirees across this country. Now, before we get to it, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting, if you find them helpful, or hey, if you find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. All right, now, let's get down to the video. So this week, in the ongoing debt ceiling fight, Kevin McCarthy, who again is a Republican and is the Speaker of the House, this week he has said that he is now willing to work with President Biden and Democrats to push up the debt ceiling and start paying all of our bills again. That is, of course, if the Democrats are willing to make a big concession on spending. President Biden, he's already said no, primarily because in order to go along with the vote to raise the debt ceiling, Speaker McCarthy has drafted up a House legislation called the, quote, Limit, Save, Growth Act of 2023, which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. But in the legislation, which is 320 pages, by the way, it proposes lifting the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion for the period of 1 year, but also requires the cutting back on things of discretionary spending, taking back some of the unspent pandemic-related funds that went out over the last year, and disappearing President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, and also cutting back the allowance that the IRS just got boosted this last year. All these cuts, according to Speaker McCarthy, would save the American taxpayer $4.5 trillion over the long run. Additionally, and a plus, I guess, to me at least, within the context of Social Security, is that within the Limit, Save, Grow Act of 2023, there is no mention of making mandatory cuts to programs or raises in eligibility ages or investments of money from Social Security into stock markets or anything ridiculous like that. There's no mention of that in the bill, which I think, again, pretty good. Now, the bill has not yet been scheduled even for a vote in the House yet, but it will likely happen probably in the next week or so. And although President Biden has already lambasted the legislation, and even some Republicans are not quite on board in the House, if it does pass, it will never make it through the democratically held Senate, which is obvious. This is not what Speaker McCarthy is even trying to do. It's just a point of leverage to try to say, hey, look, we have enough support to make some of these changes. But either way, what this does is essentially leaves us back in the position, if you are on Social Security, to wonder if and when the extraordinary measures, essentially the duct tape that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is putting on our economy to hold it together and keep government running, have run their course, and we get to midsummer without any movement on the debt ceiling. How's it going to affect Social Security benefits? Basically, it's kind of a good news, bad news situation because there is plenty of precedent over the last 3 decades where when these types of situations come up, Social Security benefits have always been paid out, at least eventually. The bad news is that they would likely, possibly be delayed for a short but indeterminable amount of time if the debt ceiling fight was to go a significant distance past the time where all the money has run out. The way this would work is sort of like a shell game, or that game that maybe you and I have played a couple times, at least in our adult lives, where you have to move some money around at the end of the month to pay for your bills, because your bills are more money than you have in the bank. But instead of getting the internet shut off, or having to coast your car downhill to save gas, or switch from normal hot dogs to chicken hot dogs, the federal government is playing with people's benefits. Now, according to Stephen Robinson, a chief economist unanimous for the bipartisan Concord Coalition, eventually the debt ceiling will have to be raised. There's no question about that. But in the meantime, the U.S. government will continue to have money coming in from taxes. And at the moment, that amount, though, is not enough to cover all the cost. Part of the reason for this is because of the fact that month to month, the government's expenses actually vary pretty dramatically. So, for example, in the months of January, the Fed spends every dollar that it has coming in, 1-to-1. But when you get into months like February or other months later on the year, then they start spending $2.5 for every dollar that comes in. So it fluctuates throughout the year. Now, like I said, up to this point, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, has been moving money around like paying the electricity one month and then paying the rent the next month and paying the car bill the next month and eventually getting them all caught up, but just not all at once. But once that time comes where that will no longer suffice, that's when the real financial chicanery can begin to happen, especially for Social Security benefit payments. This is because once that threshold of money coming in and money going out is breached, it means that the feds would essentially have to wait to pay out benefits until enough tax revenue comes in to pay out those benefits in full. So they may not be able to pay 100% of the cost of Social Security benefits on a Wednesday, but they could on Friday, assuming we all pay our taxes. But because of the difference of having to wait for the money to build up, it could cause delays. Literally running a country basically hand to mouth. The tax comes in one hand and goes out the other hand. For people on Social Security, let's be clear, they would eventually get all their benefits, but it could be delayed days or even weeks depending on how bad the fighting gets. Additionally, in the interim, it would still put seniors and retirees in a situation where their benefits are delayed because, again, those benefits could potentially legally be used to pay for other things, which needless to say is not supposed to be happening. One unique aspect of Social Security benefits is that they have an escape clause that was put into it back in the 1990s by Congress that allows payments to be issued even when there is a delay in the debt ceiling crisis, right? So it's going on right now, thank God. Additionally, money from the Social Security Trust Fund, that big pool of money that we all pay into, can actually be taken out directly from the trust fund to pay for Social Security benefits if there's a shortfall and then eventually repaid when the government reopens. Also starting in 1997, if you watch our Social Security payout date videos, you'll know this pretty well, is that they started paying out Social Security benefits on a staggered basis. So depending on when you were born throughout the year is when they pay out your benefits. So that means that even though at the beginning of the month they get 100% of what it costs to pay out benefits, that goes into the government bank account, they're actually only paying it out 25% at a time, 25% each week. What this means is that there's essentially 75% money left in the government bank accounts, which the federal government, if they came push to shove, could actually technically borrow money against, which would put us in a situation where the Social Security Trust Fund is now beginning to use the money in those funds to pay for the rest of government services. Again, that was if things continue to run quite long. The end result of this would be that Social Security Trust Fund would be depleted essentially every month, with the money being used to pay for Social Security benefits, but also to pay for the other government programs during the shutdown. Overall, looking at this whole debt ceiling fight, there are some bright sides to the situation we are in. First is that the legislation from the Republican side, there is not any part of it, direct attacks on the pension program. So they're not trying to cut down Social Security and Medicare, at least directly. That is a very noticeable change from where things were starting back in January, and probably frankly, a pretty smart political move on the Republican side. But the reality is that there is no guarantee, and it's not even likely that this bill is going to pass in its current form. It has no chance of surviving the Senate or getting past President Biden's veto desk, which leaves us still careening towards a financial cliff as early as the beginning of August, which could mean delays in payments and real-life pain for our friends and for our neighbors and for our family members who rely on prompt and persistent Social Security benefits checks. All right, so that's it for this Michael's Matters, and I really hope that you found this video interesting or helpful, or at least useful. And if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when our newest videos come out on Sundays and sometimes in between. So for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourself, take care of others, and have a happy, healthy